The Denver Nuggets have just fired Michael Malone in one of the most shocking moves in Denver sports history. Calvin Booth, the team's GM, is also out. The two people behind the Nuggets' only title, they're both gone. Did Nikola Jokic have something to do with it? What does this mean for the NBA playoffs? Are Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. next to follow? We talk about it all now on today's Mile High Hoops podcast. He's Aniello Piro. I'm Jake Shapiro. Thank you for tuning in. This is the most emergency podcast that we've ever done, and it comes exactly when we do our normal podcast time. So it's fortuitous. Aniello, what are your initial reactions? We've both covered this team for a long time, and I am just sitting here absolutely stunned.
Yeah, I mean, I've been covering the Denver Nuggets since I believe it was Malone's first season in the league, or first season coaching the Nuggets, rather. And this just took me by surprise. And I know that it's one move, kind of one sweep here with Malone gone and Booth gone, but I think we need to kind of separate it because I expected Calvin Booth. I expected the Denver Nuggets to move on from Calvin Booth this offseason one way or the other. Michael Malone, on the other hand, and I'm a bit of a Malone guy. Like, I think he's a good coach. I don't know what other options are out there. I know we'll talk about that throughout the course of the show. That's the one that really takes me by surprise. And, I'm seeing a bunch of stuff coming out on social media. There's that clip that came out from Malone a couple weeks ago talking about how, not all players want to watch film. They think coach is tripping. We saw Jokic on the bench not so long ago as well, being verbal and upset. So maybe the writing was on the wall that something drastic was coming for the Denver Nuggets. But Jake, this has got to be one of the biggest shock value stories in Denver sports, maybe even Denver sports history, certainly in the modern era.
Malone became the winningest coach in Denver Nuggets history this season. He is the only guy to have beat the Lakers in a playoff series, absolutely owned Los Angeles. Recently, the streaks against Los Angeles and Golden State have gone away. Recently, that Jokic blow up that happens on the Warriors sideline on Friday night. Sunday night, we get Aaron Gordon and Peyton Watson going at each other on the bench in a video. I was told that nothing happened, clearly was a sign, as have been all of these other things like that quote from Malone, that something's been lost. The voice has been lost of Michael Malone, because I'm with you, Aniello. I was totally of the belief that Calvin Booth was gone. He was out of contract at the end of the summer. The Nuggets were just going to let that thing expire. And I am stunned that Michael Malone no longer coaches the Nuggets. At the exact same time, this current collapse met with the Game 7 collapse of last season. Malone is partially responsible, if not takes a larger part of that responsibility. So there are reasons to believe that me, a Michael Malone guy, there are reasons to still fire Michael Malone given the last couple years and how things have gone, specifically the last 13 months.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that, like I said, the writing was potentially on the wall, and we knew the importance of this season. I go back to the story from Ramona Shelburne of ESPN, and she put out this quote early November from Michael Porter Jr. He said, quote, "If we don't win it this year, we all know they might have to break it up," end quote. So I always thought that was more so about shipping out Michael Porter Jr., Jamal, Gordon, whatever it might be. Obviously, some trickle down comes to the front office from that. But the timing of this is what is throwing me for a whirl. 3 games left in the regular season. We thought it was crazy when Memphis fired their head coach a couple of weeks ago. And now here come the Denver Nuggets, literally less than a week before the NBA playoffs, and they get rid of the winningest coach in franchise history, a guy that led them to their first and only NBA title in Michael Malone.
In Memphis, there were signs, Aniello, because last year they fired all of their assistants. They fired their entire staff. They go on I think it was like a 6 or 7 game win streak. And the one game that broke up 2 big losing streaks was against a tanking team. So there were some serious signs of a tailspin in Memphis, as well as all the issues that they've had with Ja Morant and Taylor Jenkins. And there's some clear things that Taylor Jenkins did with timeout issues. That one was a little more self-explanatory. This one, 3 days, 3 games, a week before the start of the playoffs. Today, a week from today, Aniello, the Nuggets could be playing in a play-in game with a brand new coach. That's the runway they have. Granted, David Adelman has coached this team before, the new interim coach for the Nuggets. He has been a guy who has led the Nuggets when Michael Malone has had a volleyball match or his dad was sick or other things have happened. But this is the most stunning part to me, because why wouldn't you just play it out with Malone? And to me, this is an indicator that ownership knew, Josh Kroenke knew, that the inevitable was worse than the wild card scenario of just saying, what if we throw someone else new at this issue?
Yeah, it's crazy. Speaking of Josh Kroenke, we got a quick quote from him here on the firing of Michael Malone. He says, while the timing of this decision is unfortunate as Coach Malone helped build the foundation of our now championship level program, it is a necessary step to allow us to compete at the highest level right now. Championship level standards and expectations remain in place for the current season. And as we look to the future, we look forward to building on the foundation laid by Coach Malone over his record-breaking 10-year career in Denver. So I don't think this was an easy decision. And I caught some stuff with Dover and Cecil. I was seeing some stuff on social media. The relationship between Michael Malone and Calvin Booth is being described as a Cold War, which is nothing new to you and I. We've heard that being in and around the building as well. There were some moves that were made. We're like, I don't think Malone's making this move. This looks like a Calvin Booth type of move. But clearly the friction was too much for them to overcome. Factor that in with Jokic looking frustrated, Jamal's injuries, MPJ's inconsistencies, and it was a lethal cocktail waiting to blow up for the Denver Nuggets. And Josh Kroenke said, we're not going to wait to the end of the season. We're not going to waste another MVP caliber season from Nikola Jokic. We're going to make this move now. We're going to push our chips all the way in, try to compete for a championship this season, and reevaluate come the offseason.
Yeah, Josh also just told their internal team radio that his expectations moving forward is just to play hard and have fun, which again goes to my wild card angle of they are just rolling the dice and seeing how this goes. But I want to go back to my point of next Tuesday's the plan. Last Tuesday is a game that will live in Denver Nuggets infamy with Russell Westbrook missing the layup. And potentially that leads to the start of the skid, which gets Michael Malone fired. I believe that Russell Westbrook led to Michael Malone's firing. Solely. Like, I believe that is the thing that broke the camel's back. And the reason I say that, Aniello, is because me and you know Nikola Jokic's people. They're not around often. Nikola Jokic's agent was in the building Tuesday night for his 61-point triple-double. And that was only one of a handful of games that his agent was at. Something happened last Tuesday night after that game, or something happened between last Tuesday night and now. His agent is currently in America, lives in Europe, represents a lot of European clients. Something involving Nikola Jokic. There was a conversation had. I don't know what that conversation looked like. I don't know what side Nikola Jokic was on, but I do know Nikola Jokic's people have been in Denver the last couple days, and they were involved in some of these discussions.
Yeah, and I mean, I can't remember a time that I've seen Jokic having, I don't know if you want to call it an outburst, but showing that level of emotion that we saw from him on the bench against Golden State. Like, when he's not laughing and having a good time, like that was frustration. That was anger in a game in which he wasn't even playing it. And so, again, I think the writing was on the wall. I think the biggest thing is the timing here, but you bring up a great point with the agent being in town, this and that. And I go back to, it was probably about a month ago where Jokic was asked about the MVP race. And he was talking about how, I think I'm playing the best basketball of my career right now. And Jokic never wants to gas himself up, never wants to put himself on a pedestal. Those words speak volumes when it comes from Nikola Jokic's mouth. So clearly he's been cool, calm, and collected after an hour and a half after the game when he meets with us, the media. But internally, conversations with the brothers, family members, teammates alike, something was wrong. And we'll see how much of a role he plays in this new head coach.
Obviously, Tim Conley had the ability to draft Nikola Jokic, but Michael Malone developed him. And I think this gets lost a lot
100%.
Because a lot of people just believe Nikola Jokic would have been Nikola Jokic no matter what. I'm not someone of that belief. He was taken in the second round for a reason. All these teams in the NBA skipped on him for a reason. And it took a year of the Denver Nuggets having him in the organization for them to even believe he could be a starter in the NBA. It took a while. And without Michael Malone, who takes a chance on Nikola Jokic, I'm not sure that Nikola Jokic becomes one of the greatest basketball players of all time. So Nikola Jokic has felt immensely loyal to Michael Malone for rightful reasons. And I never thought I'd see a fracture in their relationship.
And I don't even know if we like do we label it a fracture? Because while I don't know the ins and outs of Michael Malone and Nikola Jokic's relationship, it looked like two guys that were, happy working with each other. And I'm of the belief, I don't know if you make this move cold without Jokic's input in some way, shape, or form, right? Like, I think you go to Joker and you say, hey, we're going to make this move. Do you have any thoughts? Do you have any reservations? Whatever it might be. Like, I remember hearing conversations that Jokic was one of the guys that pushed for Russell Westbrook in the offseason as well. So we've seen Jokic kind of assert himself in instances. And I don't know if he's just sick and tired of it or whatever, but I always thought Jokic and Malone went together like peanut butter and jelly. No Murray pun intended there. So that's what's even more surprising to me. Again, I think that was a foregone conclusion. We were just treading water, getting to the end of the year. Malone is the shocker. I don't even know if I fully agree with the move 3 games before the playoffs, but clearly we saw it from Kroenke. We've heard it going around on social media. Something was wrong. A 4-game losing streak. The Minnesota Timberwolves broke the Denver Nuggets. There's no other way to slice it.
Yeah, and it's funny because the Denver Nuggets have been the team in the West that have broken so many teams. They were the ones who broke the Portland Trailblazers the way they were constructed with Dame and CJ. They were the ones who broke the Utah Jazz with Donovan and Rudy. They were the ones who broke the Los Angeles Lakers ultimately of LeBron and AD. They were the ones who eventually broke the Phoenix Suns that have been led by Devin Booker and that whole ragtag team of very expensively paid guys. They have broken just about everyone, but ultimately they themselves have been broken by the Minnesota Timberwolves. And I think that not only last Tuesday night, but you have to go back to the Game 7 collapse, because I do this thing with Michael Malone that I've thought about, and this is one of the reasons why I've been a Malone guy. If you go back to the start of the 15-16 season when Malone was first hired, he takes the Nuggets from winners of 30 games under Brian Shaw in his last season to 33. It was fine. But if you go through the record books, through 15-16 all the way up till now, you could take maybe an issue with how the 2019 season ended, the 18-19, but there's not really any season you can point to until last year where you can definitively say Michael Malone fell short. His team fell short. And this year is another year you can be saying that. So I don't know if his message has been lost on this team. I personally believe that the bigger issue with the Nuggets is roster construction. Calvin Booth's disastrous tenure as GM of the Denver Nuggets. He makes 2 awesome moves on the front end with with Bruce Brown and KCP, and then follows it up by wasting a ton of draft capital on guys that really don't play and taking the exact 2 timelines approach that the Warriors were trying that wasn't working, and they were ahead of the Nuggets. The data was all out there for you, Calvin. And they instead of maximizing Nikola Jokic's window, they minimized it by trying to spread it out. And now we're sitting here in this situation where the Denver Nuggets have followed in the footsteps of the Toronto Raptors, the Los Angeles Lakers, the Phoenix Suns, and the Milwaukee Bucks, and firing their coach 2 years after an NBA Finals run. 3 of those 4 teams won championships. The Nuggets obviously are one of those 3. And you look at the way all those teams have gone. The LeBron Lakers, they get blessed and get Luka Doncic. They're the outlier. The Raptors are in a rebuild. The Suns are likely starting a rebuild this summer. And the Milwaukee Bucks made a panic trade for a star. Oh, yeah, the Suns made a panic trade for a star as well. So the writing is on the wall for what the Denver Nuggets are going to do next in the offseason. And we'll get to some of the next stuff because I think that's fascinating. But I think we have to focus on the now, because this move was made now for the now. Right? Like the Nuggets front office and Nikola Jokic still believe they can win a title this season, and that the wild card scenario is the ability to take this team back to the top. One of the things that has happened here, AP, in the last couple of weeks is the Nuggets offense has stunk, really stunk. David Adelman is their offensive coordinator. He's the guy that leads the offense. And if you look at the games Michael Malone isn't around for, that DA leads the teams, the offense looks better. So I wonder if the Nuggets are just going all out and saying, we're going to try and win a title with offense and we're going to hope for the best because DA runs such a good offense and we need to go back to our unique offensive approach that we have lost here the last couple weeks.
It's an interesting point that you bring up with David Adelman as well, because he's been a hot name in head coaching searches for the last couple of off seasons as well. So pure speculation here, but maybe Kroenke and company feel comfortable moving forward potentially with David Adelman as the head coach. Now, there's a GM vacancy. I would imagine that whoever the new general manager is going to want to come in, probably clean house, coaching staff included, and build it his way. We've seen that time and time again, but it is something interesting to consider with DA, considering that he's interviewed for a number of jobs here in recent memory. And I want to go back to the point with Josh Kroenke, because you're talking about, okay, they're going to, make this shock value move. They're going to try to win with offense, this and that. When the team owner is talking about play hard and have fun, That's not necessarily a battle cry, for lack of a better phrase. That seems more like a waving of the white flag and kind of accepting the inevitable fate, which is a disappointing ending to the Denver Nuggets playoffs. Hope that's not the case, but that's at least how I'm interpreting it. And the one thing that I have a question with the Cronkies in general, more so with Josh. Josh is a basketball guy. Like, he's got his hands with the Avs, right? This and that, but he played at Mizzou, big basketball guy, buddy with LeBron. His ego is probably really hurt after the way that this season and last season went. So is Josh going to step up to the plate? The Nuggets have been notoriously cheap when it comes to executives and head coaches and staffs and this and that. When you have the best player in the world, you listed off all those teams, Phoenix, Milwaukee, the list goes on and on. Nobody has Nikola Jokic. And I understand that Giannis at one point had the argument for best player in the world. Give me Jokic over Giannis 10 times out of 10 career-wise over and over and over again till the cows come home. So what is Josh Kroenke? What is the brain trust of the Denver Nuggets going to do to ensure that Jokic has a legacy akin to that of Tim Duncan, LeBron, and Steph? And I don't mean this as a slight, as opposed to a guy like Dirk Nowitzki, who has one incredible NBA championship. But Jokic, with the talent that he possesses, the MVPs, the finesse, he should be talked about as a top 20, top 15, top 10 player all time in NBA history. And that's up to the Cronkies to figure out.
Yeah, I put this out on social media the other day that Nikola Jokic right now, the rest of his career, the question is, does he end up being compared to Bird or Magic or perhaps even above that, or does he end up being Moses Malone? Like, that's the rest of Nikola Jokic's career to me, and that's going to be a question that the Nuggets are going to have to answer. And, you know, you look at what the future might hold, as you kind of point out, with an executive or a head coach. The one thing the Nuggets have in their trump card, even though they've been cheap, I agree with you, with their front office and their head coaching positions, they can offer a head coach a joint role, which is very unique. So this offseason, when the Nuggets hire someone to lead their organization, they could hire one guy. So maybe they hire a guy like Brad Stevens, who might not want to work for a new owner in Boston, to be the front office leader and the coach. Maybe they hire someone from Houston like Ime Udoka, who has been awesome, to be the front office guy and the head coach. You know, there are plenty of potential guys that can fit this mold. But that's the one thing that I think could give the Nuggets someone very veteran. The part that's interesting to me is the answer of why do you do this now besides the wild card thing? Maybe David Adelman's their future head coach, because he has interviewed everywhere and he has almost gotten jobs in Toronto and Brooklyn and some other places as well. I've been connected to some of these things, and he is thought of really highly around the league. And if you look at what the Nuggets did when they hired Malone, David Adelman's in a very similar situation. Longtime assistant, son of a very famous coach, got an opportunity in Minnesota, was kind of a raw deal, honestly. And then he's been just duking it out on the Nuggets bench, waiting for the opportunity. And perhaps Michael Malone has been telling him, wait for the correct opportunity for you. Don't just take your next coaching job wherever it comes as your second opportunity, because you might not get another one. So DA has been waiting here for something to pop up. And the Nuggets might be giving him these 3 games and perhaps whatever happens in the playoffs as a runway to test him out as the next head coach of the Denver Nuggets.
I think it's a fair take. And, you know, like we were talking about earlier, like, if that is the case, I think you nailed it. Like, this is the opportunity to see what this guy's made of, to see if he's the guy that they want to be the next head coach of the Denver Nuggets. And I only pause when I say that because I would think the new GM, assuming they go the experienced route, a Bob Myers-esque type of guy, not saying that he will be the guy, but if you go get a guy that's been there and done that as an executive and has won championships, they're going to want to do it their way. And maybe they come in here and they like David Adelman and they're comfortable rolling the dice with that. But history tells me it'll probably go the other way. And
on that, by the way, experienced GMs, I heard a whiff of Tim being connected to this last night, and I scoffed at it because the Nuggets currently had people involved. I heard through some people in the grapevine that that Tim might be interested in a comeback. I'm not sure if that's true. I'm just saying I wouldn't have ever put this out into the universe unless all this news happened today. So I'll put it that way.
Tim Conley did not want to leave. To use a Godfather reference, he was made an offer he couldn't refuse. in Minnesota. I mean, everybody with a brain was going to take that deal, regardless of how much he loved Denver. Like, we always remember, like, when Danilo Gallinari was here, he would talk about, oh, I love Denver. I love the Whole Foods downtown. I love this. I love that. Like, it was much similar with Tim Connelly. He loved it here. I'm assuming his family loved it here as well. Now, you've got a brand new ownership group out there in Minnesota. You've got a good team. You just traded away Karl Anthony Towns for Julius Randle. Is he ready to, give up on that? But if we're talking about it from a guy like Tim Connelly, who's got money in the bank now, was the architect of a championship team in Denver, despite not having the ring for it. Okay, like what else is there left to check? What boxes are there left to check off? You look at quality of living. You look about, being able to be an executive for a team in an organization that you're familiar with. Oh, and you just so happen to have the best player in the world. Not just Tim Connelly. This is an attractive offer for anybody out there. I mean, you mentioned Ime Udoka, Steve Kerr, he's not leaving Golden State, but I'm sure every coach executive in the world is probably thinking in the back of their head, how do I get to be the guy that runs the show with Nikola Jokic?
And think about it this way. Even though I am not the biggest Doc Rivers fan, and I thought that was over, no. There's potential here for Doc.
Stay with me now.
Out there. I mean, me and you talked about it 3 weeks ago. I said I had a nightmare. I literally had a nightmare that Doc Rivers was the coach of the Nuggets. And I texted Aniello. I was like, yo, you will not believe the dream I just had. But not actually on Doc becoming the coach. Doc could have just hung it up, continued broadcasting. The reason he got pulled back to both Philadelphia and Milwaukee is because he had a chance to coach one of the best players in the league. So guys with status like Doc Rivers, even though I don't think he's a good coach, he does have status, will be attracted to the Nuggets coaching job, whereas in the past they haven't been. We talk about how the Nuggets have trouble attracting free agents. Well, they have trouble attracting coaches as well historically, but they haven't had a player this good. So I don't know, man. I'm just sitting here and I'm kind of bummed for Malone, because I look at Malone's tenure, and me and you have covered most of it. And again, I think this is a roster construction issue. I don't think he has the tools in place to put a team out there that's good at defense to support Nikola Jokic. On top of that, this current 4-game losing streak happens at a time when Jamal Murray's been hurt. This whole season and the defensive struggles have come after ownership decided they weren't going to pay Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who's the best perimeter defender maybe the Nuggets have ever had. And on top of that, Aaron Gordon has missed a significant chunk of this season with a multitude of issues while also dealing with off-court trauma. There have been so many things going on with the Nuggets this year that do not set up Michael Malone well to coach this team. And I'm bummed that it ends like this for undisputably the best coach in Denver Nuggets history, who has so many iconic moments and iconic quotes that will live on as like Denver's, I'm not saying he's John Wooden, but he's Denver's basketball's John Wooden. He is the most important coach in Nuggets history, bar none.
100%. I mean, I think back to the quote, it must have been 2016, 2017. They were still wearing suits and ties. The coaches were talking about, I don't know the kid's name in Minnesota. I don't know the kid's name in Philly, but I know this kid's name. I know Nikola Jokic. I mean, that is epic Nuggets lore. I mean, you think about the chain on the parade. I've had the opportunity to, spend some time with Malone, take that L on the way out. I mean, it's legendary stuff. And I agree with you, man. Like, look, I know we're media, right? Like, you don't want to, we're not friends with Michael Malone. We're not friends with the player, but sound bites aside, excuse me. He was everything you could want in covering as a coach, right? And the other thing, and I don't think this is the reason why he got axed, he's a little bit of that old school mentality, right? Like, he's going to say it to your face. He's not going to, pad you on the rear end all the time. He's going to tell you like he sees it. And I liked that about Michael Malone. And I understand maybe the message was stale, but to your point, this is a roster construction thing. This is a Nuggets roster that has deteriorated year after year since they won the NBA championship. And Michael Malone has been talking about it publicly. Well, we got to do this. We got to do that. Well, we don't have this guy anymore. We got to do that. What have the replacements been? It's been off-brand Walmart goods. Like, you're going from like Heinz ketchup and French's mustard to the generic stuff, for lack of a better phrase. And I don't know, man. I'm bummed out for him. Again, could not agree with you more on Calvin Booth. Michael Malone, 3 games before the playoffs, I'm not so sure. And here's the other thing that I'll say real quick. Going back to Josh Kroenke's, have fun, play, whatever the exact quote was. You think there's anybody in that Nuggets locker room that's going to react well to this? What do you think Jamal Murray's thinking right now? I'm not sure Jamal Murray cares.
Here's the thing on that, AP. The vibes with the Denver Nuggets from 2018 till midway through about last season were fantastic. aside from just the Jamal Murray knee injury. Even in those 2 years without Murray and Porter, which felt like a death march, everyone was happy. Everyone was enjoying their lives. Basketball was great because everyone got to share in the greatness of the greatest passer they have ever seen, and everyone got to eat and got a fork at the table. It was fun for everybody. This year especially, it has been a drag. It has been miserable to be around this team. So when you see quotes from the big NBA reporters of one of the reasons Michael Malone was fired was the vibes were off in Denver, that is so silly to fire a guy because of bad vibes. But there's something to it. There really is. The vibes were off. This is not the same team we've known. They lose game after game at home, AP. They get punched in the mouth and just let it happen and then don't respond. This is not the team Michael Malone coached to 2-3-1 comebacks, the 7 on the road in Utah. This is not that team. There were still hints of it, as proved by that game in Golden State a couple weeks ago when they won with nobody, that they still had this fight. But that fight has largely gone away. And that fight was the characteristic of these Michael Malone teams, is that you could never count them out of games, even in games they lost. Remember that game in Minnesota, 23 first round playoff series where they were down like 15 with a minute left, and then they all of a sudden are back in the game because they hit some threes, right? They didn't win the game, but it just went to show you that you could never count a Denver Nuggets team out. This year, it felt like as soon as they trailed in a game, as proved by the fact that their first quarter record, if they were leading after the first quarter, was like 38-7. As soon as they trailed in a game, it was over for this team.
They were a dead team walking. I mean, we used the word a couple times, but the vibes were totally off. You know, having been there in the building with you, we were in LA together when they swept the Lakers off the court. I mean, the vibes could not be any more different with this team. And here's the one defense of the move. And maybe this is the right move. Maybe they go out there and get this combo head coach, GM type of scenario, whatever it might be. And maybe we're proven wrong, and this is just shock value right now. But there was something to what Michael Malone had built. And I think to just kind of dismiss that, and I know Kroenke was, complimentary of him in the press conference or the press release that he put out there, but it just screams bad vibes. And CJ McCollum put out a tweet. He says, "This league is out of pocket, man. WTH is going on. Firing good coaches right before the playoffs is nasty work." I completely agree.
Pazzo put out a tweet that he was shocked. George Karl has put out a tweet that he was shocked. These are people that have worked with and around Michael Malone.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely mind-numbing. I was in the radio booth, chatted up with Dover and Cecil and the producers when I got the text message in our group text, and I thought it was a joke. Like, I thought I was being trolled. And then I open up Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it, and I see Shams tweeting it out and this and that, and I'm like, holy moly, like, this is a real thing. So we'll have to wait to see how the dust settles. At the end of the day, though, Jake, this is the most attractive combination of head coach and front office opening right now in the NBA. So that bodes well for the Denver Nuggets. What it means for them for the rest of this season, cross your fingers, say your prayers. I have no idea what this team is going to look like come playoff time or play-in time if things keep going the same way.
I just want to go back to the booth point because this is going to get overlooked, just how bad things have been with Calvin. And this is the type of stuff that's going to affect Jokic's legacy, because ultimately 4 of the 5 championship window years so far, Jamal Murray's legs haven't been there. That's one problem. But also the last 2, the team just wasn't around him in place to do anything. And the moves that they made at times, whether it be Bones Highland or Boogie Cousins, could have had a negative impact as much as a positive impact. But let's just pick it up with after the moves of Calvin Booth getting Bruce Brown and KCP. And this isn't including even like letting Colin Gillespie go, which Colin Gillespie's been good for the Suns. And by the way, another part of this is that the Nuggets haven't developed a two-way guy in years. And that used to be a staple of Malone, is he would turn these guys that were fringe NBA players into rotation players, let alone fringe NBA players like Nikola Jokic into one of the best players of all time. So Michael Malone's development path, and maybe this is just, you can't contend and develop at the exact same time, as proved by the 2 timelines Golden State thing and now with the 2 timelines Nuggets thing, but they haven't had a two-way player have any impact in years, and that used to be a staple. Anyway, picking it up with KCP and Bruce, the Nuggets trade Bones Highland and 2 second-rounders for Thomas Bryant. That was right before the championship. They don't use Thomas Bryant at all. He's just the latest big that they never end up using, that they use draft capital for. Those 2 second-round picks, of course, are huge because that's what prevented the Nuggets from moving off Dario Saric and picking up someone useful at this deadline. Okay, right after that, during the finals, I believe this happened, where the Nuggets traded a 2029 first-round pick and the rights to Maxwell Lewis for Julian Strother, Hunter Tyson, and Jalen Pickett. Basically, they traded 1 first-round pick down the line, and they were able to get a first-round pick immediately, which they used on Julian Strother, and then some second-round picks, which they used on Hunter Tyson, Jalen Pickett. So the Nuggets, Julian Pickett, I think, has been a successful late first-round pick. Like, he's shown some signs. It's too early to say, but I'm overall happy with that. But giving guaranteed contracts to Hunter Tyson and Jalen Pickett has prevented the Nuggets from adding veterans like this season and Justin Holiday to the end of the Nuggets bench. We're starting to see some positive signs with Jalen Pickett just here recently, but ultimately he is not a guy who's probably going to impact a team in the postseason. He could be a good regular season backup point guard. Okay, after that, Bruce Brown, Jeff Green, and Thomas Bryant become free agents. Bruce Brown, the Nuggets can't match. They can't do anything about that. Jeff Green, the Nuggets decide to not use their mid-level exception or give Jeff Green, I think they could have given him non-bird rights extension, which would have nearly matched what he got with the Rockets. And to this day, the Nuggets have been missing someone to back up Aaron Gordon and Nikola Jokic in the front court. Thomas Bryant was nothing. They offer Reggie Jackson a 2-year, $10 million deal, the second year of player option. Reggie Jackson, of course, not that good. He had just been cut, wasn't a factor in the championship season. The next season, he's the Nuggets' backup point guard. That offseason, the Nuggets extend Zeke Naji to a 4-year, $32 million deal. Y'all know what happened there. The next season, during the draft, the Nuggets trade the rights to Ryan Dunn and 3 second rounders for Deron Holmes. The Nuggets have not seen Deron Holmes yet. It's hard to say how that played out, but there is a video of the Suns front office on the trade call saying they would have done it for 2 second rounders, but they held out until Calvin panicked and traded a 3rd second rounder, which ended up being the last second round pick that the Nuggets had in their book. They allow KCP and Justin Holiday to become free agents. They, according to KCP's wife, do not offer KCP a contract that is in line with what KCP should be earning. Justin Holiday is not brought back despite being someone who played in the playoffs. The Nuggets then trade 3 second-round picks with Reggie Jackson to Charlotte to get off the contract that they shouldn't have signed in the first place so that they can offer Russell Westbrook a contract and also give Dario Saric the same 2-year, $10 million contract with a player option. They have not used Dario Saric at all. That has been an utter disaster. Russell Westbrook, everyone's got an opinion on. I'm of the opinion that it was bad. Nonetheless, the Nuggets traded 3 second-round picks just so that they could sign Russell Westbrook, which says a lot. On top of that, last offseason, the Nuggets extended Jamal Murray and I believe Aaron Gordon to giant contract extensions. And now that's how the Nuggets have gotten there. If you were to give a grade on those 10, 15 moves I just laid out, AP, after KCP and Bruce, knowing what we know now, what's your grade?
I mean, it's not a passing grade. Like, do you consider a D a passing grade? Like, I mean, C's get degrees is the old saying, right? Back in the day, you're shooting for that 70% and above. C- at best. I mean, because listening to you list that off, I'm like, okay, that's a bad move. Oh, that's a bad move. That's also a bad move. Oh, and this one's a bad move too. I mean, and here's the thing. I saw you, I think, tweet about it, or you said it with Dover and Cease. Like, you got to give him credit for going out there and getting KCP and getting Bruce Brown to make this team a championship squad. But that was the icing on the cake. That's your hot fudge sundae. Okay, I just need my little whipped cream and my cherry on top, right? Tim Conley built that championship team. Calvin Booth has, while he in his best efforts, and I think back to that quote, I think it was at Media Day, either last year or the year prior, talking about the Spurs approach of, we're trying to win. I don't want to quote him exactly. He was like, we're trying to win multiple championships over an extended period of time, not just try to win back to back to back to back, right? Because that's unsustainable. So I understand the vision from Calvin Booth. And look, not having Deron Holmes out there this year really hurts his credibility a little bit just because he could have been a big piece for this Denver Nuggets team. But I go back to the word that I used before. This roster has been deteriorating over the last 2 seasons with no sign of it getting any better. If anything, it's only gotten worse.
One of the best signs of deterioration is Reggie Jackson, who didn't play on the championship team a year later, is a very important part of the team. Like, it shows you right there that the roster getting worse. Vlatko went from somebody that's just a nice 11th, 12th guy to have to he might need to be the Nuggets' 7th man in this playoffs or the 8th man in this playoffs. So this roster has no doubt gotten worse. I went with a C- this offseason, AP, even though I knew it was a bad offseason, because the most important parts of business Calvin actually got done, which was signing Jamal Murray to that contract extension and signing Aaron Gordon. And people will say now that that contract was bad, but I don't believe that. Jamal's still an elite player. You do when he's healthy, and you do not get a player of that caliber back for trading Jamal. Ultimately, the Nuggets were stuck between a rock and a hard place, and their only way out with Jamal is through. So I'm somebody that believes that the Nuggets actually got a lot of the most important stuff done. And that's the part that really ticks me off, AP, is that this core, I still believe, can win a championship. That's the part everyone's missing. And this core, when the starting 5 plays this year, has been good. It's all the moves around the fringes for 3 years now that have been bad. And I still don't know to this day if those trades for Bruce Brown or the pickup of Bruce Brown and the trade for KCP was something Tim Conley left as part of the plan for that offseason that Calvin Booth just carried out, or it's something Calvin Booth thought of himself, because that happened quickly after that transition. So I don't even know how much credit to give Calvin Booth for the championship run. And I'm unsure of how much to blame him for the Nuggets' future, because while he's made some really bad moves in the margins, which are important, he's actually taken care of some of the bigger moves, in my opinion.
I agree. And the only thing that I'll push back on is the Jamal and AG extensions, in my opinion, were a foregone conclusion. Maybe more so Jamal than AG, right? With the options that were out there in the financial. And I believe AG took a little bit of a pay cut compared to what he could have gotten in the open market to stay here in Denver. So, like, yes, let's give a tip of the cap to Calvin Booth for getting both of those done. But it's not like he moved mountains to ensure that Jamal Murray would stay and Aaron Gordon would resign, right? So I think good moves, but not earth-shattering moves. And you know, I just go back to that championship season. I think it was, I forget after which game it was, but Jeff Green sat up there on the podium in front of you and I and talked about how we played like dog bleep or whatever the descriptive word that he used.
I think it was game 2 against the Heat in the finals.
Yeah. They don't have that. And I understand that everybody wants to say, oh, they don't win a championship without Bruce Brown. 100% agree. Bruce Brown was the straw that stirs the drink to help push that team over the top. But it was a combination of Bruce Brown. Jeff Green played an immense, Godfather type of role on that roster. I know they didn't win last year, but Justin Holiday, I thought, brought a lot of value to this team as well. And they're you can only put so much weight on Nikola Jokic's shoulders and Jamal Murray's knees for that fact. But this team was set up. I always talk about this with the Rockies to an extent, because I agree with you about where the Nuggets were at, but it felt like they were living on a bit of a prayer this year, because you looked at what they had to do 2 years ago to win the chip. You looked at how they fell short last year, and you looked at the roster with the injury to Dron Holmes, and you said, how can we expect to be better than we were last year with this roster construction, living on a prayer with Russell Westbrook that he's going to figure it out? And look, Russ was good early in the year when Jamal was hurt. Last 3 weeks, last month, post All-Star break, it's been a disaster. And so I'm just sitting here and I'm saying, you know what? Hindsight's always 20/20, but saw this coming a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just, I mean, I'm still stunned in AP, so I'm trying to figure out where to go next.
Brother.
Because there's so much here. There's so much meat on the bone. That Cold War between Booth and Malone that nobody ends up winning, I think is fascinating. Do
you think it's interesting that they did both, though? Because like we were talking about, Booth, I think, was a foregone conclusion. Talking about Cold War, obviously no winners in that. But are you surprised that they went with the full swoop instead of keeping the continuity for this year and evaluating in the offseason when they hire a new GM who then makes the decision of if they want to stick with Malone or not?
Yeah, I'm actually stunned. It's both. I thought Malone would be, if there was going to be a Malone gone situation, it would have been this offseason. I believed it would have been this offseason. I'm not surprised that Calvin Booth is gone. I thought all of this was coming in the offseason. But again, it goes to show you that the Nuggets really did want to give David Adelman a chance, and that they knew that this season wasn't ending the way they wanted it to. And to me, that's the biggest admission from Josh Kroenke, is he knew this season wasn't going the way it needed to. It goes to show you how involved Josh Kroenke is secretly behind the scenes still.
Yes.
Something that he, got a lot of flack for during the Melo days. Really did. And he was too involved. And he's been a little less involved, to his credit. But I look at today, and a big question to me just goes back to Nuggets ownership, which is, how committed to winning are you? How much of this is just about money? How committed are you to winning? And to me, today's move tells me that the Nuggets are really caring about the winning in the window with Nikola Jokic. And they care about keeping him in Denver, and they care about making him happy, because KSE does not make rash moves. KSE lets coaches' contracts expire. They let GM's contracts expire. And granted, Calvin's contract was just about to expire. But Michael Malone was signed through 2027. He had just signed an extension, I believe, like 16 months ago. So this is pretty stunning that they were going to get rid of Malone. I thought maybe a new GM would come in here. Malone would have another year, like kind of you were alluding to, and then we would kind of see it evolve the next season. It just doesn't compute that Nikola Jokic is going to live part of his era without Michael Malone, because these two have been together so much. But I think today's statement from KSE is huge. It says that they care about winning, and they really care about keeping Nikola Jokic here.
Yeah, and I know sometimes it's easy to throw, owners and executives under the bus and this and that. But I think the one optimistic that I would say in regards to Nuggets fans that are wondering what's next, I mean, look at what they've done with the Avalanche, right? They've been competitive. They took, the last couple of years since their Stanley Cup has been interesting, but they look like they're locked in and ready to go. Goaltender made the trade with Rantanen, right? They're ready. Look at the Rams, also owned by KSC. I mean, Sean McVay and company, were a couple of plays away from beating the Philadelphia Eagles last year and potentially playing in a Super Bowl themselves. So, Arsenal, I believe, has been competitive. I'm not as up to date on the European soccer as I am the other sports, but I do believe Josh Kroenke and the Kroenke and KSC as a whole, when they say, we're committed to winning, we've got a championship pedigree, we've got a championship program, and we're going to do what we need to, live up to that expectation that we've set for ourselves. So I'm not as worried about the long-term perspective of ownership. I think they're going to do what they need to do to be competitive, but I just think this is a sign of the times. If Josh said enough is enough, let's rip the Band-Aid off and get it over with, which is a bit extreme. We'll see if it's the right move when it's all said and done.
Yeah. What's the Malone moment that will always stick in your memory?
I think it's got to be him on the parade. It's the few that I listed. Take the L on the way out. I mean, 100%. I mean, honestly, the one that makes me the most joyful to kind of look back on like a hallmark moment is when he didn't call out Joel Embiid and Karl Anthony Towns by name and said, I know this kid's name. I know Nikola Jokic. Because in my opinion, that was like the first stamp of okay, this Joker guy, is he going to be an all-star? I never in a million years thought Nikola Jokic would be as good as he is right now and will continue to be. So to me, I look back at that and I believe I was in the building, maybe even in high school or early college covering that game. And just to see where this team has come from now, it's been an incredible ride. So, and like I said, I know we're media, this and that, but feels like Malone got a little bit of a raw deal here, Jake.
Yeah, to me, it's the Lakers' daddy. That's just iconic.
Yeah, that's incredible.
The Nuggets went from not even the Lakers' little brother, the little step-headed, red-headed child of the Lakers to absolutely owning them over 2 off seasons and completely ruining the end of LeBron's career until he got Luka. But that was going to be the narrative, that Jokic basically stopped LeBron from his last title, and Malone was a huge part of that. So I thought that was cool. We focused a lot about Jokic and kind of the Nuggets in general. Do you think these 2 moves today were a sign that more is coming, that the purge continues? Is Michael Porter Jr. for sure gone this offseason? Is Jamal Murray on the way out? Is Aaron Gordon perhaps even on the way out? Is this the summer of massive change in Denver? Or is it going to be the leadership changes, but we keep it together with the core and see how it plays?
I think everybody not named Nikola Jokic is on the chopping block. Simple as that. I think I like this core. I think Porter can be great at times. I think Jamal can be great at times. It's just not good enough, though, when you have the best player in the world playing better, arguably, this season than he has in his previous 3 MVP seasons. And so for that and that alone, I think everybody's expendable. I think they'll do what they can on the open market, trades, free agency, whatever it might be, to try to get this team right, because Father Time, is going to beat everybody at some point. Nikola Jokic is now on the other side of 30. So as great as these last 4 or 5 years have been, there's no telling what the next 3, 4, or 5 holds for Nikola Jokic. So you need to push your chips all the way into the center of the table now and do everything you possibly can to get back to an NBA championship and make sure that Jokic has more than one ring on his finger when it's all said and done. Because frankly, anything short of multiple championships for Nikola Jokic with the skill set and the level of play is a failure.
I'm with you. We did that podcast here on the Mile High Hoops podcast, which you can check out on Denver Sports on YouTube. We did that podcast a little while back. I looked at other historic big men that comped Nikola Jokic. The end of the story is he's got about 2 to 3 years left of being this elite player, and probably another 3 after that of being a very good player. So the Nuggets window with Nikola Jokic is getting smaller. And to me, we're back to where we were in 2021, AP. You got to get defense and shooting around Jokic. That's just, it's so obvious what the Nuggets need. Everything else on top of it is gravy. That's how they built their championship roster in 23. It was size, it was shooting, it was defense. Those are the 3 things the Nuggets need to target this offseason. Anyone who doesn't meet that on their roster currently is up for grabs, in my opinion.
Nug life.
And we're back.
It's back.
It's Piro. It's Shapiro here on the Mile High Hoops podcast. Thank you for tuning in to this long podcast. We've got a ton of stuff coming up today on Denver Sports all across our channels, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Of course, we've got stuff on our website. I've got an in-depth piece coming up on David Adelman, everything you need to know about the Nuggets' new bench boss. Maybe he's only here for a week. Maybe this is the start of something special with DA. Don't know yet. We're going to find out. Anyway, I guess we'll talk to you on Thursday. Who knows what will be happening in Nugget land by then. Jake Shapiro, AP, Mile High Hoops podcast. Thank you for tuning in.